What if the very person meant to uphold justice was the one destroying it? Imagine stepping into a courtroom, believing in fairness, only to be humiliated in front of everyone, just because of the color of your skin. That's exactly what happened to Jamal, a young black man who thought he was just there to speak the truth. But the judge, she had other plans. Jamal wasn't a criminal. He wasn't on trial. He was simply standing up for what was right. But from the moment he walked in, he could feel it. The stares, the judgment, the assumption that he didn't belong there. Then, just when he thought things couldn't get worse, the judge did something no one expected. She laughed, mocked him, called him something that should never be said to anyone, especially in a place meant for justice, and she thought she could get away with it. But here's the thing about power. It can shift in an instant. And in just a few minutes, that same arrogant judge was the one scrambling to save herself. Karma doesn't play favorites, and today she learned that the hard way. So, what do you think happened next? Stay with me, because this is a story you won't forget. Where are you watching from, and what time is it? Let me know in the comments. Jamal Carter had always believed in justice. Ever since he was a kid, he dreamed of becoming a lawyer, of standing up for those who couldn't defend themselves. At just 19 years old, he was already on his way, top of his class, dedicated, and determined. But today wasn't about his future. Today, he was in court for something much bigger. His best friend, Marcus. Marcus had been accused of something he didn't do, and Jamal knew it. He had proof. He had the truth, but he also knew that in a courtroom like this, truth wasn't always enough. Jamal had seen it too many times, people who looked like him being judged before they even spoke. It didn't matter how smart he was, how polite, how well-dressed. Some people would always see him as a problem, not a person. And today, one of those people just happened to be wearing a judge's robe. The moment he stepped into the courtroom, he felt it. That look, cold, dismissive, like he wasn't worth the air in the room. The judge, Judge Reynolds, didn't say a word. She didn't have to. Her eyes said it all. Jamal took a deep breath and reminded himself why he was here. Marcus needed him. The truth needed him. He squared his shoulders and walked forward, knowing he was about to face something he would never forget. And the judge? She was just getting started. Jamal stepped forward, his heart steady, his voice clear. He had practiced what he was going to say 100 times. He knew the facts, he had the evidence, and he believed in the power of truth. But the moment he opened his mouth, Judge Reynolds let out a dramatic sigh, shaking her head. "Oh, great. Another one who thinks he's smarter than the law," she muttered, loud enough for the courtroom to hear. A few people chuckled nervously, but most just sat in awkward silence. Jamal frowned but kept his composure. "Your Honor, I have evidence that proves my friend's innocence." She cut him off with a laugh, flipping through some papers on her desk without even looking at him. "Oh, how cute. You think you're a real lawyer, huh? Tell me, boy, did you get your law degree off the internet?" A few gasps could be heard in the courtroom. The jury members shifted uncomfortably. The prosecutor avoided eye contact. Even the bailiff, who had been standing stiffly at attention, looked like he wanted to disappear. Jamal clenched his fists at his sides but didn't react. That's what she wanted, for him to snap to give her a reason to throw him out. He wouldn't give her that satisfaction. Taking a deep breath, he tried again. "Your Honor, if you just allow me to explain—" "Oh, I allow you," she interrupted, raising an eyebrow. "Listen, boy, I don't have time for nonsense. You people love wasting the court's time with your lies and excuses." The silence in the room became suffocating. Even Marcus, sitting at the defendant's table, looked stunned. Jamal's pulse pounded in his ears, but he held his ground. "This isn't about me, Your Honor. It's about justice." Judge Reynolds leaned forward with a smirk. "Justice? You want justice?" Her voice dripped with sarcasm. "Let me make it easy for you. Shut up, you little black monkey. Get out of my courtroom." The room erupted in gasps. The prosecutor looked up, eyes wide in disbelief. A woman in the front row covered her mouth, shaking her head. One of the jury members muttered, "No way she just said that." Jamal felt like the air had been sucked out of his lungs. His vision blurred for a second, not from tears, but from pure shock. Did she really just say that? In a courtroom? In front of everyone? His whole life, he had faced bias. He had seen the way people looked at him, the assumptions they made. But never like this. Never so bold. So unapologetic. He stood frozen, humiliated, but not defeated. Judge Reynolds smirked, expecting him to walk out in shame, but she had no idea what was coming next. Jamal didn't move. He didn't flinch. He didn't look away. He met Judge Reynolds' gaze, his expression steady. He could feel the weight of the courtroom pressing down on him. The silence was deafening, the air thick with tension. The judge smirked, expecting him to storm out in shame, expecting him to lose control. But instead, Jamal did something she never saw coming. He reached into his pocket and calmly pulled out his phone. The screen was lit up, the recording app still running. "Your Honor," he said, his voice clear and unwavering, "I believe this courtroom deserves justice, not hatred." The murmur of the crowd grew louder. People leaned in, realizing what was happening. The judge's smirk faltered. "What do you think you're doing?" she snapped, shifting uncomfortably in her chair. Jamal didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. "I've been recording this entire trial." Gasps filled the courtroom. Some people clapped. Others just stared in shock. The prosecutor's eyes widened, and the bailiff took a hesitant step closer, unsure of what to do. Even the jury members looked shaken. Judge Reynolds scoffed, waving a hand dismissively. "That recording means nothing. You think anyone is going to believe a kid like you over a respected judge?" Jamal didn't blink. He lifted the phone for everyone to see. "I didn't just record the slur you threw at me," he said. "I recorded every single comment, every disrespectful remark, every moment you let your bias show." The judge's face drained of color. The evidence was undeniable. There was no twisting this, no explaining it away. Jamal turned to the prosecutor. "You're an officer of the court. You believe in justice, don't you?" The prosecutor hesitated, but finally nodded. "Yes, I do." Jamal extended the phone. "Then here's your proof." The tension broke. The courtroom erupted. Some people stood up, clapping. Others gasped in disbelief. Reporters in the back scrambled to take notes. Even Marcus, who had been sitting quietly at the defense table, let out a breath he'd been holding. Judge Reynolds gripped the edge of her desk. "You can't do this. I am the law in this courtroom." Jamal shook his head. "No, Your Honor. The law is bigger than you." For the first time that day, the judge had nothing to say. She realized what had just happened. The courtroom exploded into chaos. Lawyers stood up, their voices overlapping as they demanded an immediate review of the case. Spectators murmured, some whispering in shock, others shaking their heads in disgust. The tension was electric. Judge Reynolds slammed her gavel. "Order! Order in my courtroom!" But this time, no one listened. The prosecutor, still holding Jamal's phone, turned to the defense attorney. "I think we can both agree this case is compromised. We need an immediate review." The defense attorney, who had been quiet for most of the trial, nodded. "Absolutely. This isn't justice. A couple of security officers stepped forward. For a brief moment, Jamal thought they were coming for him, but instead they turned toward the judge. "Ma'am," one of them said, "we need you to stay where you are." Judge Reynolds' face twisted in anger. "Excuse me! This is my courtroom." Then, a voice from the back cut through the noise. "I wouldn't be so sure about that." Heads turned as a well-dressed woman in a dark suit stepped forward. She had an air of authority, and the moment the judge saw her, the color drained from her face. It was Victoria Hayes, a high-ranking official from the state's judicial board, and she did not look pleased. "Judge Reynolds," Miss Hayes said firmly, "we need to have a conversation. In private, now." The room fell silent. You could hear a pin drop. The judge's hands clenched into fists. "This is outrageous. I've done nothing wrong." Jamal, still standing tall, tilted his head. "Then why do you look so nervous?" A ripple of agreement passed through the courtroom. Even the jury exchanged glances. The truth was out, and everyone knew it. Then another officer stepped forward, whispering something into the ear of a court clerk. The clerk's eyes widened, and he quickly passed a note to Miss Hayes. She read it, then looked up. "Judge Reynolds, step down immediately." Gasps. The judge shot up from her seat. "You have no right to—" "I have every right." Ms. Hayes cut her off. "After reviewing complaints against you and now hearing this recording, the board is placing you under immediate investigation. Until further notice, you are suspended from duty." The judge opened her mouth, then closed it. She looked around the room, realizing she had lost. Jamal exhaled slowly. He had come to court to stand up for his friend, but in the process, he had taken down a corrupt judge. For the first time that day, the courtroom truly felt like a place of justice. The courtroom was no longer under Judge Reynolds' control. She had been forced to step down, and her career was now in question. But this wasn't just about one judge. This was about something much bigger. Within hours, news spread like wildfire. The recording Jamal took wasn't just powerful. It was undeniable proof of corruption. By the next morning, headlines across the country were talking about the incident. "Racist judge caught on tape. Suspended immediately. Young black man stands up for justice and wins. Judicial system under fire after courtroom scandal." But the biggest revelation came when an investigative team started digging into Judge Reynolds' history. Turns out, this wasn't the first time she had treated black defendants unfairly. Case after case surfaced, revealing a disturbing pattern. She had a long history of giving harsher sentences to black men compared to white defendants in similar cases. Some of those men were still sitting in prison, their lives ruined by a corrupt system. The Judicial Board had no choice. They launched a full investigation into all of her past rulings. Some cases were overturned, others were reopened, and families who had suffered under her unfair decisions finally had a chance to seek justice. And Jamal's friend? The reason he had come to court in the first place. His case was officially reopened. With a new, unbiased judge, he was finally given a fair trial, and this time, the truth was heard. Jamal sat in the courtroom, watching his friend walk free, and he felt something he hadn't felt in a long time: hope. But the impact of this case didn't stop there. Jamal's video had gone viral. People across the country were talking about racial bias in the courtroom. Protests erupted. Officials were pressured to review their policies. And for the first time in years, the system was forced to confront the ugly truth about racial discrimination in the legal world. Jamal, once just a teenager dreaming of becoming a lawyer, was now a symbol of justice. As he walked out of the courthouse, he felt different, stronger, He wasn't just a victim of the system. He was someone who had fought back and won. And this was only the beginning. Because one day, Jamal wouldn't just be in the courtroom as a witness. One day, he'd be the lawyer fighting to change the system for good. Jamal stood outside the courthouse, breathing in the fresh air. The weight of what had just happened was still sinking in. He had come here to testify for his friend, but he had ended up exposing a judge, uncovering years of injustice, and sparking a national conversation. But the truth is, this wasn't just about one racist judge. This was about a system that had been stacked against people like him for generations. A system where black men were judged before they even spoke. A system where a young man like him, who had worked hard, stayed out of trouble, and believed in justice, could still be mocked and humiliated simply because of the color of his skin. Jamal had seen it before. He had heard stories from his uncles, from his neighbors, from his teachers. But today, it had happened to him. And instead of letting it break him, he had fought back. Now, his story was everywhere. People were sharing the video he had recorded, reacting with shock, anger, and determination. Celebrities, activists, even politicians started speaking out. "This is what black people have been saying for years," one commentator wrote. "Now, the world can't ignore it anymore." But not everyone was supportive. Some people tried to defend the judge. Maybe she didn't mean it that way. Why was he even recording? Was he trying to set her up? This isn't about race. Some judges are just rude to everyone. Jamal knew there would always be people who refused to see the truth. But he also knew that change only happens when people refuse to stay silent. The pressure on the judicial system kept growing. More people started coming forward with their own stories. Old cases Judge Reynolds had ruled on were being reviewed. And finally, after weeks of investigations, the verdict came in. Judge Reynolds was officially removed from her position. She tried to fight back, claiming she had been unfairly targeted, but the evidence was overwhelming. Her career was over, and for the first time she had to experience what it felt like to be judged, and to have no power to stop it. But for Jamal, this wasn't just about revenge, it was about justice. And justice didn't stop with one bad judge. Jamal's friend, the one who had been falsely accused, was finally given a fair trial. This time, with a fair judge and real evidence, the truth was clear. He was innocent. Jamal watched his friend walk out of the courthouse a free man. They hugged, both knowing how close they had come to losing everything. But Jamal wasn't done yet. He had seen firsthand how broken the system was. And now, he was more determined than ever to be part of the change. He started speaking out, giving interviews, attending community meetings, and connecting with activists who had been fighting this battle for years. His dream of becoming a lawyer was no longer just about ambition. Now, it was a mission. One day, he wouldn't just be a witness in a courtroom. One day, he'd be the one standing before a judge, demanding real justice. Have you ever faced unfair treatment like this? How did you handle it? Let's talk in the comments. Do you think racism in the justice system is still a big problem today? Why or why not?